Former racist people of Reddit, what changed your opinion? I was raised in a really small, rural town, so it was casual racism constantly. I fell into the rhetoric, unfortunately. What changed me? Just living and traveling and listening and trying to understand. This applies for other views as well. Traveling and just listening can really open your eyes to a lot of things and on so many levels. Take care of yourselves, folks. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. Mark Twain. Not sure this counts, but I went from living in a hyper-religious and extremely intolerant and completely white environment, to living in a county where I was the foreigner and received quite a bit of abuse for it. Swore I would never be that kind of person. That is a hard lesson, but a good one. I am a Hindu, and in India Hindus and Muslims have little bit of beef in between. There was a new student in class, Muslim. My bench mate was absent that day. Teacher made him sit on my bench with me and said no one will change their places. Time passes, small talk, common interests, good friends. LOL, beef, pun intended. Yeah, it's true. A lot of black kids are told growing up that white people want to bring back slavery. At least that was the case at my ghetto-ass school. My mom and family never really said that, though some did and still do believe that's what Republicans want, lol. I remember when there was a white kid in my classroom for the first time in elementary. He ended up being my best friend that year. A lot of the other kids were mean to him just because he was white, pretty sure he's still white. But you want to know two funny things. 1. They'd make fun of darker-skinned black kids all the time. Colorism is super deep in the black community. 2. The teacher was white and no one had a problem with her. So they couldn't even apply their hatred evenly. His family moved across the country and I never saw him again. This was back in the 90s, so there were no emails or anything to exchange. In middle school there were more white kids, so things calmed down a bit as far as I could tell. Maybe it was people growing up, or maybe a combination of things, like just being around other types of people. I've noticed that the more people are around others, the less goofy they are. The racist white people I've encountered tend to be the isolated types in echo chambers. Meanwhile, the rednecks who are always around different people are some of the nicest people you can meet. I grew up as one of the only white people in a predominantly black area. My parents drilled into me that they hate me just because I'm white and to fear them. And at the time they weren't necessarily wrong, because many of those kids were being told the same thing about me at home. I just learned from experience it isn't true. I made many friends that I still love dearly, and I wish neither of us had this mindset drilled into us. 2. The teacher was white and no one had a problem with her. My sister-in-law did teach for America in an inner-city school that was in practice all black. One of the students asked her if she'd ever met a white person, and she was like, "You know I'm white, right?" The crazy thing is the kid didn't believe it. He just assumed everyone he knew fell into the category of black, and stopped noticing actual skin color. I knew this guy, Mac, whose biological son was white. Not weird, right? Except Mac's family was 100% Japanese. So was his wife. Back in the 60s, Mac and his wife moved to rural Kansas. When their first kid was born, Mac went to pick up the birth certificate from the clerk. To his surprise, the baby's race was listed as white. He told the clerk there must have been a mistake on the baby's race, obviously his son couldn't be white. He says she just looked at him all confused and said, "Of course he's white. He sure ain't black." This lady literally had no idea Asian people existed. In grade 5, I learned about the Holocaust and saw a film showing how a typical Jewish family experienced it from beginning to end. Let's just say the ending left me mortified. And through listening to how adults and even celebrities portray themselves in public, I started accepting the fact that all races have good and bad apples, but the bad apples need to own up to their bigotry and learn to live with one another. Enough excuses. Edit. Thank you for the upvotes and awards. To give better context, I became more interested in social studies after grade 5 because I wanted to learn more about other cultures and races. I just became more open-minded and decided to treat others how I like to be treated rather than because someone knew better. Definitely was a work in progress and got corrected on a lot on racist remarks over the years. Still learning now, but I got a good family and friend group. Think I turned out alright. I know we all live in turbulent times, but please do take the time to take care of one another. We are all in this together, and I know we can all pull through. Humanity has survived up until now, right? I grew up in a family that was extremely racist towards African Americans. Especially they would always rant about how AA customers at their jobs are always rude and too lazy to clean up after themselves. After I got a job myself, I realized that it seems like every races are the same. Some are rude. Some are lazy. Most people are nice regardless of the color of their skin. I just find it unfair how my parents specifically targeted AA people. I've experienced just about the same amount of rudeness and laziness from the other races. I just realized what all the escorts ads mean when they say, no AA. Thought they didn't want any recovering alcoholics. Not me, but my dad's story. In the 1970s, my dad was in elementary school, said he had always thought African Americans were just different. So one day he's standing in line, and there was two African American brothers standing behind my dad when my dad turns to the younger brother and calls him a racist term, I don't remember which one. The older brother turns to my dad, winds up and punches him straight in the face. He said he was bleeding, it hurt like hell, and he was crying, but ever since that day he knew they were just like everyone else because that's exactly what he would have done. Motherfucker literally punched the racism out of him. My education growing up was fairly conservative and my neighborhood lacked diversity. When I went to college, I met a ton of people who were different from me, but just as human. Exactly how human are you? Plot twist, ops an alien. As soon as I was old enough to realize all my favorite foods were not American. Eye-opening. A few years ago I was visiting Phoenix and had a super racist Uber driver who railed on Mexicans and in the same breath pointed out his favorite Mexican restaurant as we drove past and recommended it to me. Bro, why are Uber drivers spewing political and racial shit all the time? Like, bro, you know we rate you right. My uncle by marriage grew up with racist parents, but one day, when he was 20, IIRC, he fell asleep at the wheel after working a double shift and rolled off the side of the road into a ditch late one night. It was a country road in nowhere upstate New York, and the only other person on the road at the time was a Puerto Rican man also getting off work. Pulled him from the car and drove to the nearest gas station to use the pay phone, way before cell phones existed. My uncle survived thanks to that man. His car caught fire shortly after. My uncle was so touched by this man's kindness he vowed to help the man as much as could. Until my uncle's death from cancer in 2013 they remained friends. I remember hearing the story during Thanksgiving one year when I was younger and not really understanding what racism was. I'm 63. When I was a teenager, one of my older relatives told me his story. He was in his late 70s or early 80s at this time. 9 bikes, I never grew up with any black people or gay people, but somehow I had kind of a negative opinion of them. A few years ago, I had surgery and they didn't think I was going to make it. I spent several weeks in the hospital. The nurse who took care of me was a gay black man. He was a very skilled nurse, and as I got to know him, I realized he was probably the most caring and compassionate person I've ever met. I'm here today only because of the care he provided for me. I don't know what I had against the blacks and the gays, I didn't even know any. I don't know what I had against the blacks and the gays, I didn't even know any. Simple ignorance does so much to hold us all back. I'm glad he was able to meet someone who shook up his worldview in such a positive way.